Hey, what's going on everyone? Justin here, and in this video I want to cover some recommendations for one of the prompts on the History Challenge Readathon. This is a nonfiction history-based readathon event that I'm co-hosting with Jenny over at Book of Shenanigans, Justin over at Ghost Reader, and Emma from A Cup of Books. I'm really excited for it, and a lot of other people that are into like nonfiction history just seem really excited for kind of like a history event. And even if you don't read history regularly or nonfiction regularly, I do encourage you to check out the announcement video. I'll leave some of those below just so you can kind of get check it out. And it's not going to be intimidating at all. And you know, anyone who wants to just dip their toes in history, I'm all for that. But let's go ahead and get into some of the recommendations. And I'll also leave all the other prompts down below in a file as well. For this video, we're going to be doing recommendations for history books that are written by women. And there is kind of like a stereotype that all history is written by old white guys, and it's definitely not the case anymore. It might have been the case pretty much back in the day, and even then it really wasn't, but there is a reason that stereotype exists, so we want to kind of do our best to negate that. And let's just go ahead and get started. I read 2 books actually last month that are history based, written by female authors, and let's go ahead and just start with those ones. I wrote these ones down because every now and then I do forget. It doesn't seem like I forget, but I purposely just like omit the subtitles because, you know, I don't want to like screw it up. But the first one, we're going to go with Mudlark, In Search of London's Past Along the River Thames by Lara Maitland. And this is all about mudlarking, and if you don't know what mudlarking is, the reason I knew about it beforehand was I read a lot of like archaeology magazines and stuff, and like it's been mentioned before, but basically rivers that are tidal rivers, so they actually with the tides, the beach lines kind of go up and down based on the tides and whatever. You can kind of like scour like the mud banks and stuff on low tides and like look for stuff. And the River Thames obviously has a ton of history attached to it. London's been occupied for several thousand years, and just over the course of, you know, decades and centuries and millennia, things have kind of accrued just, you know, under the water level. So when the tide goes down, if you take your time, you can actually find lots of really cool stuff. And the author, what she does is pretty much in all her spare time, she just like travels up and down like the Thames looking for different things. And it's just really cool because when she finds stuff, she kind of like talks about and researches, you know, where it comes from and like what era it is and what's like unique about it. And it's kind of cool just seeing like personal things as well as common things. It's just a really cool book if you're into kind of like local history. That's also especially like for me in Northern Maine, there's not like I don't have like cities that have been here for like thousands of years, so it's kind of cool seeing like other kind of like it's not even an archaeological site, obviously it's literally like the riverbank and stuff. But it was actually really cool. Like I said, if you enjoy learning about kind of like localish history and that kind of the history of like common items especially, I think you'll really enjoy that one as well. But there are also like pretty cool unique finds as well. It's not all just boring stuff like buttons and whatever. All right, and the other book that I read last month that was written by a woman is Sea People, The Puzzle of Polynesia, and that was by Christina Thompson. And this is all about kind of the anthropology and the early history and the settling of Polynesia, which is basically all the islands inside the triangle of Easter Island, New Zealand, and Hawaii, which encompasses a pretty big swathe of the Pacific Ocean. And it's actually really kind of neat especially if you're into like anthropology and learning about like kind of like the early history of cultures and kind of like ethnogenesis and stuff and like myth retellings and everything. And it kind of covers the entire scope of, you know, quote unquote discovery of Polynesia, because obviously the Polynesians themselves were the first, you know, colonizers and discoverers of Polynesia. So she does do really good kind of making sure she emphasizes that point, but she does kind of go with like the historical record as well, like for example with Captain James Cook being like kind of the notable European explorer, I guess you could say, of Polynesia, and kind of like his like thoughts and like primary sources on that sort of thing, kind of the different interactions as well. But then all the way up through the modern age with sort of like some of the canoe adventures where traditional methods were used to kind of navigate thousands of miles of the Pacific Ocean, like I said, with like a traditional canoe, or pretty close to a traditional canoe with traditional like navigational methods and everything. I thought this was really cool. I never really read much on Polynesia, which is why I picked this one up, and I'm really glad I did because I learned a ton. And if you're interested in that part of the world, definitely check this one out as well. So now let's go on. I think I'm vaguely gonna go by female historians, and I'm gonna, since I do like ancient through medieval for the most part. I'm going to kind of just go through a couple different time periods, starting with the oldest. And the first one, I really enjoy these Oxford very short introduction books, as you can see. And this one is one of my favorites. It's The Ancient Near East, A Very Short Introduction by Amanda Podney. She does a really great job pretty much doing like a great kind of just overview survey of the ancient Near East, and not just purely Mesopotamia. Other cultures are involved as well. And she also has a great course from the teaching company. If you know anything about the great courses, she has one on, I can't remember hers is the entire Near East or one on Mesopotamia, but I do know she has one, and I listened to it like a couple years ago, and it was really good. So definitely check her out if you're kind of into like, you know, ancient Mesopotamia, ancient. I think this one doesn't cover much on ancient Egypt. That's like the one aspect she kind of like left out. But if you're into like Babylon, Assyria, the Hittites and stuff like me, even though I haven't read the oh, of course you can't. Of course I point to them, but you can't actually see my Hittite books and stuff. I used to read a lot on the Hittites, but like I don't think I read one like in a year and a half. So I definitely need to get on that. Now, what am I doing? I put my books over on this side. All right, now let's go on to some classical history. Probably one of the biggest, more prominent authors on especially the Roman period is Mary Beard. Now this one is SPQR, History of Ancient Rome, and this is far and away like one of the best-selling books in on ancient Rome, at least in the past like decade or so. All right, that's been published in the past decade. That's kind of more like a general overview of the history of Rome. And if you've never read anything about Rome and you really want to, this would definitely be a great way to get into that. There were only a few problems I had personally with the book, but I think a lot of that was dealing more with, I've already read like a zillion other books on the history of Rome, so it was more just me kind of like rereading the same sort of stuff as well. Though it is a very palatable book, and I encourage you to read it if you've never read anything about Rome before. I will be picking up one of her other books. She has several books, but she has one on the Roman Triumph, and since my channel name is Triumphal Reads, I probably should get a book on just the Roman Triumph. If you don't know what that is, that's sort of like the victory parade when like a Roman general would come back, but it has a lot of there's a whole scheme to it, I guess. Scheme probably isn't the right word. There's a whole like set of rules and stuff you gotta follow in order to like do the triumph and stuff. But anyways, she's got a lot of books on the classical period. She does have some books too, I believe, on women like in antiquity or women in the classical world. So definitely go ahead and check those out. Why do I keep going to put them over there? I'm backwards today. I don't know why. All right, I got two medieval author books. This one is actually, these ones are kind of unique in that it's actually a husband and wife team, and it's Joseph and Francis Guise, and they wrote these three social histories on the medieval period. We've got Life in a Medieval Village, Life in a Medieval Castle, and Life in a Medieval City. I've read the village one and the city one. I need to get to the castle one at some point. Life in a Medieval City, I will say, is probably one of the best social history, probably the best social history that I personally read on the medieval period, and it's definitely up there in like some of the best social histories of kind of like histories of like daily life and how people actually like worked and lived, you know, what they actually did and ate, and you know, their kind of cultural values and norms and stuff. Definitely up there, easily in the top 5 of like any period that I've actually read about. Frances Guise also has a couple books, I believe, on her own as well, but I just think it's kind of neat that it was like a husband and wife team that actually like collaborated, and they did that on like several other books as well on the medieval period. That's literally the third time I've turned right for some reason. The other well, she's not actually a medieval historian, but we got Barbara Tuchman's A Distant Mirror, The Calamitous 14th Century. This is a really cool book dealing largely with the 1300s and all the kind of crazy stuff that sort of happened during the 1300s, including obviously the Black Death as part of it, but a lot of just like famines and strife and warfare and everything, and it's just like a really good kind of overview of the beginning of like kind of like it's like the beginning of the late Middle Ages. You can definitely kind of tell like the high Middle Ages have, you know, all the glamour of chivalry and stuff. And while it's still there, it's definitely starting to go like kind of on the downward trend and stuff. But she isn't a medieval historian. She has other books as well. The next one I need to read is The Guns of August, which is probably one of the most famous World War I history books. And since I have like a whole World War I shelf, I really should go ahead and get one. And I can't remember if she's also the one that wrote the Zimmermann Telegraph, which actually is another like World War I book about obviously the Zimmermann Telegraph. That was like an intercepted message from Germany to Mexico to try to basically provoke or get Mexico to like attack the United States in World War I. But anyways, that's a story for another day. But yeah, I definitely encourage you guys to read this one. It's very readable, and there's a lot of cool like little vignettes and like kind of side stories and stuff. Really interesting stuff. And for the last history book, this one's more of a general-ish one, I guess, is Get Well Soon by Jennifer Wright. And it's History's Worst Plagues and the Heroes Who Fought Them. Kind of a pertinent book, I guess, for these interesting times, I'll say. By Jennifer Wright, I think has one other book about like bad breakups or something like that. But she's super witty. I encourage you to follow her on Twitter as well. She's got like funny insights just all the time. And what she does in this book is deal with different plagues and different kind of like disease outbreaks throughout the past like 2,000 years, and kind of how people handled them, whether they did really good, which is very rare, or whether they did bad, which is quite common, and kind of going over everything. And there's a lot of cool like pop culture references and stuff. Like I said, it's a humorous book, and pretty lighthearted, despite kind of, you know, the subject matter. Definitely encourage you to read that if you're kind of looking for something kind of fun, and I don't want to say uplifting, but you'll probably like chuckle as you read it, even though, you know, you're reading about like the Antonine Plague or something like that. So there you have it. There were what? I think that's what, like six or seven history books written by women. There are plenty of others for sure. Let me know if you need any more recommendations down below. Leave some comments if you've written, well, I guess if you have written one, leave a comment down below as well. Or if you've read a book on history by women that you really enjoyed. I'm always on the lookout for good recommendations. And if you look at the all the different prompts in the file below as well, if there are any other prompts, I guess, that you want some more like detailed explanation or recommendations for, leave a comment down below as well, and I'll make a video specifically just for that prompt as well. So please hit the like button, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Check out the Instagram, Twitter, Etsy, website, everything. Did I forget any plugs? I don't think so. So whether you're reading a book, oh well, I was doing so good, but I'm too lazy to edit that out. Anyways, read victoriously.